Alright, so here we are in turn 14, just about to launch the German offensive into the Russian positions here, and already hitting a bit of a roadblock here. That Russian tank battalion that was thrown forward to try and DG earlier on has made itself a bit of a nuisance. Attempted an overrun with the Panzer Grenadiers and this AT battalion on that lowly tank battalion. I believe it was 7-1 in the open. Should have been pretty clear. I didn't get the DG because of some airfields in the area. German Air Force was unable to clear the fighter cover. We did try. Didn't want to attempt barrages to be intercepted, etc., etc. So we went in straight up. Ended up getting defender surprise, 6 shifts, rolled terribly. So I have to take a loss on one of these attacking units and retreat with the other, or take a loss. We'll retreat because forcing the defender to take his option will just mean he retreats 1 hex further and I get no further along. So the Russian defense of this counterattack has started well. Certainly not a fair trade from the German point of view here. So one other thing to note, I had to roll for losses on the multi-unit formations coming in. We'll take a look at that. And our losses were, if we can get the glare going here, I'll be very happy. So I lost 2 infantry regiments from the 14th Panzer and 5th Panzer, a Panzer Grenadier from 4th Panzer, and Tiger Tank Battalion from Großdeutschland. So some heavy losses there. The Tiger really hurts, AR-5, 8 attack. Should be fairly easy to rebuild that unit though, and I have some equipment points on the board, so that will be making its return soon. But let's get on with the counter-attack. Alright, so the stage is set for our counter-offensive here. God damn, a double turn would have been amazing. But I think we need to do something, so I think it's the right decision to make a move now. We'll take a look at the plans here and see a bit of a front line. I still have to make an attempt at some barrages along this line. Failed. I did end up attacking with my aircraft. Risked the interception. Did go poorly, but I was able to attack multiple hexes and avoid multiple interception. I think I played that rule correctly. Basically overwhelmed them with bombers and air superiority in the area so they couldn't intercept everything, and had some successful barrages from that. So my idea of meeting in the middle here actually looks plausible if I can make something happen here. So Germans are going to do a reactionary barrage on that hex there. We'll see what comes of that. I was going to do probably a low odds attack on that unit to see if we could dislodge it, weaken it, hopefully get a DG there as well. And then I have 3 stacks in reserve to exploit whatever we can. So 7th Panzer has a few units here, maybe aiming to go that way, or at least attack in that direction. I don't know, the overrun won't be possible. Yeah, and then 2 stacks here of Großdeutschland and I believe it's 7th, no, not 7th Panzer, somebody, 4th Panzer I believe. So we will see what happens, and there's a lot of reserves in some of the stacks there, and we're looking to push this way, and I think we should be successful there. Should be pretty straightforward, so let's get to it. Alright, so here's the results of the German counterattack. Not quite as successful as I would have hoped. Still good, still creates a dent in the line. We've created a bridgehead through the defensive positions here. Managed to secure a 2nd bridgehead over the river here, so should we take some knocks here, we should be able to cycle some troops in and around. I was looking for 2 spots in which to break through. I think with a little bit of better planning, maybe using more forces in the initial attack, not focusing so much on reserves, I could have gotten a little bit more out of this. I'm still happy, I would say, with our results though. A decent trade of units, a I'll go over that in a moment here, but managed to capture this pop point here. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. That actually, if we can hold on to it for the Russian half of the turn, we will gain another victory point as the Germans. So they managed to keep up a good fight so far in this game. We'll take a look over at Riga as well, where we did do some pushing as well. Oh. So we attacked here as well as here. These two hexes ended up killing one step, forcing a retreat on an artillery regiment or battalion, and also forced our way through here with an overrun with these Tiger tanks, or I don't know if it was them actually, but we're able to drive these Tiger tanks forward and kind of clear this road outward, and again put a little bit of pressure on the Russian position in the rear area here. So Russia has a big question as to how do they deal with this, with what they have locally, which isn't a ton at the moment, I would say. We do have elements of the 5th Tank Corps here. They're already fueled from reserve. They moved up from around these positions in reserve. That was about as far as they could get, but they are now fueled and ready to go. We'll have to see how we deploy them. We should be able to capture that point back, but we also need to balance a counter blow with ensuring we're not going to melt away if the Germans win initiative and decide to take it. Because, as I've said before, there's extender here. There's some more extenders in this area as well. We've got headquarters in there. We've got some weakly defended rear areas here. If the Germans can continue to force through, then there are certainly bigger worries than this little pocket here at the moment. So as to why these units were left, I don't really need the rail line into Riga right at the moment, and these units are now out of supply, and cutting this direct path, there's still maybe some options, but I've made it a little trickier to get those units out of there. They'll require fuel to move. They'll require supply, which they are not anywhere near having. So, question marks there for trying to pull those units out of there. I think they're going to lose them. One more note about the Germans' attack on this turn. Received 2 headquarters as our reinforcements in this turn. Kind of secured this position, or at least ensured this force will not be cut off should the Russians try and drive this way. Since I wasn't using rail cap to move supply through Riga, ended up moving my headquarters via rail, one to here and one to here, with a supply depot here, which they're both drawing from. So gives us a nice level of fluidity. Headquarters here, headquarters here, headquarters there. So it's going to be very difficult to actually try and chop off the head of these forces here, I think. I could be completely wrong and they could be dead next turn, but I think that makes sense in theory here, so we will see. So we'll go take a look quick at the losses. So this is the losses from the counteroffensive. We're only halfway through the turn here. The Russians are yet to go, but here's the Russian losses from that offensive. German losses, no slouch here for the Germans. They have less units, but 1, 2, 3 AR-5 units. Lost a couple steps of aircraft, but one entire aircraft destroyed. Again, certainly weakened the Russians here, though. If you look at the mechanized corps, we lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units from the 3rd mechanized, so they have pretty much faded away to nothing, I think, in the area. So that was a very powerful formation, so the Germans definitely looking stronger for that. So alright, we will get on with the Russian half of the turn and see where that takes us. Okay, so here's a situation at the end of the Russian combat phase. Taking a look at the north here, where the Russians had planned a major somewhat major offensive to finally clear through these units here. Have some reserves there and there. Already prepared some DG stacks in the rear here. Really could have done some damage if things had went our way. We still could, but this breakdown unit, the AR4, has been a real speed bump so far, which is how the Germans had intended it to be. It's in decent terrain, it's in a hedgehog, it's behind a river line. Even with us being able to get around it and surround the unit, still unable to pull it out of there. It survived 2 barrage attempts, one from an aircraft and one from artillery unit. Then survived a 5-to-1 attack, achieving defender surprise, taking 2 steps of Russian units with it, but it remains on the board. So, being behind the river line, these reserves are not going to be as effective as I would have liked, and hopefully these reserves can come in and maybe punch at that 2 pop point hex there. If we can capture that, the Russians can earn a victory point on this turn, but that's going to be difficult. There's some decent units in that hex there, so I think I have one more combat to complete to the west there, and then we will be into reaction or into exploit and see what we can do with these reserves. Alright, so that is it for turn 14. Did manage to defeat that reserve regiment that was, or the breakdown regiment that was in that hex there where the artillery is currently sitting, at the cost of 2 of those 5-3-16 tank battalions. So not a fair trade. Not a ton of armor in this area. I've kind of siphoned it off to the more wide open parts of the front, so that's a big loss. We'll have to see if we can do something, especially considering the terrain that's about to open up here. So need to find a way to get some more armor into this area. Decided not to do the attack here. If we can get a double turn, we can certainly take it, but what that's going to mean, because nothing else happened on the front, is that the Germans are going to gain a victory point for this turn. So that puts them in the lead in the game, which feels strange, but we'll take that. So just a quick run across the front here. We do have some DGs, so if the Russians do get their double turn now, they can take advantage of that, as well as some increased supply. We'll be able to funnel into this and really cause some headaches. I think both sides will want to go first here, should they get the roll. So nothing really here, just moving up to meet positions. I still want, as the Russians, to start to attack this rail line, since I know that the Russians want to do that as the German player also. I'm just kind of holding on to it when I could probably use some of those troops elsewhere, but that's kind of a shitty part about playing solo. But whatever. So just some assorted units in the fields here, just making their way forward, trying to join up with this. As you see here, some DGs on the German formations ended up using the long-range Air Force to counter-barrage a lot of these units sitting here. Luckily I had a spotter next to each stack, so I was able to do some attacks. Like I said before, we did counterattack. I think I covered this. We did counterattack and captured that pop point back, but it wasn't enough to gain us a point on this turn. Ended up killing that empty wood hex there, killing 2 steps of German formations, losing another strong Russian armored unit though, another battalion, I think a 10-3-8 or something like that, 10-3-6. So we're not trading well at the moment, I don't feel. But we'll do the initiative roll. Actually survived supply rolls there as well, so if we can figure out something here and extend some trace over there, maybe we can pull them out of there. The Germans, or the Russians, did pull back from their positions heading towards Riga to try and shore up what's going on here. Still not very strong. It's very important, I think, that the Russians get the initiative here with their Narva box units coming on at this turn as well. Can hopefully strengthen up these positions and then again try and turn towards Riga. So we'll do the initiative roll here. Do the Russians on the red and the Germans on the white. Oh. And we have a Russian initiative, and they will take that. Okay, so with all the DGs on the board, that's going to cause some big headaches here. We should capture there. We should be able to make our way through these lines, and that could be very painful. God, I wish I had armor here. Still, I don't think it's going to be a good news story. There is a bit of a river line there. It's going to prevent a clean breakthrough. It's a little more well defended. I had a reserve infantry move forward into that hex. The 845 was in reserve and moved forward to prevent the expected attack on that hex. So there is still some openings here, though. Only some hills to the right of that. So that, I imagine, will fall. Flipping some units into their combat mode here will open up a lot of opportunities as well. These infantry will continue to move forward. Shit. Alright. And then the German formations are kind of sitting ducks in their positions at the moment. Luckily the Russians are a little worried about defending as well. So it might not be a huge counter-attack here, but there certainly is the opportunity, and there's openings. Okay, well, we'll get on with the next turn and see what happens.